Hey-o, built a little housey, house. Hey, welcome back to Black Magic Craft. I spent yesterday building this. A little wood-framed house. Why? I don't know, I just grabbed the balsa wood and kind of felt like making it. What's it gonna be for? Not really sure. I am gonna keep adding onto it and turn it into a more usable structure for gaming. But mostly it was just a meditative little project. And I might as well show you how I did it. Quite easy to cut balsa wood. You can just use an X-Acto knife or whatever. But if you're gonna cut a whole lot of it, especially at the same length over and over again, a cute little handy dandy table saw is a heck of a lot easier and faster and more fun. So regarding the scale on this, I'm working pretty loose. In general, this is kind of set at a 28 or 32 millimeter scale for gaming, but the material I'm using doesn't exactly translate to that scale, representing true modern framing. This little square stock that I'm using for the studs and the plates, it's a square and it's really quite large. It doesn't properly represent a 2x4 or 2x6, and this spacing I'm using here of 1 inch, well, at a D&D scale, it's 5 foot centers. If I were to actually build this at a proper scale to modern building standards, I'd need some really thin material to represent the studs, and the density of them, how close they'd be together, would make this almost not able to be seen through. They'd be really clustered together. So this really is not being built with exact realism in mind. It's just supposed to give an impression of realism. If somebody who didn't know anything about framing took a glance at it, they'd think, yeah, that looks like a house being framed. Apologies, but I gotta interrupt this video for a quick second and do a little sponsory-do. I don't know if you've noticed lately, but lumber is really friggin' expensive, and I'm trying to build a whole house here, so I gotta make some dosh. This video is sponsored by my friends at Into the AM. They make some of my favorite graphic and basic tees on the market. Talked about them plenty of times before. If in the past you've gone to their website to buy some stuff and you've gone man, that design is so cool, I love it. You click on it and it's sold out. And you think, darn, that's the shirt I wanted, but it's sold out. Good news, Into the AM have restocked a bunch of their most popular and favorite designs. So there was one year after and you couldn't get it. Now is the time you should go check it out. And of course, you want to use the link in my description, because if you do, you'll get 10% off your entire purchase. And that will stack on top of whatever other sale they might have going on at the moment. Legit, these are nice shirts. They're wicked comfy. I wear them all the time, and they've got a bunch with really cool graphic designs. So yeah, go check it out. Link in the description. All right, back to building. Realistically, with the material I'm using and kind of how I'm laying it out, This framing style is a lot more akin to something that you might see 100 years ago. These timbers are basically like framing with 8-inch by 8-inch posts rather than modern lumber sizes. The one thing that is a lot more modern versus old is that I'm doing the floors in a platform framing style versus a balloon framing style. The difference between those is just that like the first floor sits on top of the walls of the second floor, and then a set of walls sits on top of that versus really long studs that carry all the way up to the roof with the floors floating, which is what you usually got on more turn of the century houses, at least in North America. And my order of operations is a little bit all over the place with this build. I didn't completely build a set of walls before adding floors, and that's because I didn't know what I was making. I kind of vaguely in the back of my mind thought that this would turn into some kind of Mordheim ruins, a really old fantasy house that's destroyed. So I was kind of going with that framing style, and I thought maybe that the building would be open on one side. But as I progressed, it started to turn into more of a modern building for some reason. I don't even know why. This is just flow of consciousness building. And it was far less about the end result and much more about the journey. And I certainly started to think that, maybe I should shift gears and try to make this as realistic as possible. I've done a lot of framing in my lifetime. I was trained as a carpenter, worked as a contractor for over 10 years, then did construction management on huge projects. I know exactly how a house is framed, be it one, from 100 years ago or one from this year. But I was already too far into this to go that route. I'd have to scrap it and start all over again. And while that could be like an interesting thing to do, I was just having a good time putting stuff together. It's kind of like when you're building a house out of Lego. You're sort of trying to make things realistic and leaning on real world knowledge of how houses work, but at the same time, it's still just a Lego house, and you're just having fun putting the pieces together. And that was the same here. Cutting and assembling these pieces of balsa wood was essentially just next level Lego house building. And while I sort of like the idea of the finished project just being a framed house, I didn't really know what the heck I would use that for. Kind of considered some sort of modern game setting where maybe there's a new home development and there's this framed house mid-construction, and that would look really cool, but it wouldn't actually be that functional in a lot of games or look that interesting on a shelf as a display piece. The further I got, the more I knew, I'm probably going to add some actual sheeting to this house, and this framing will only be partially visible, so there's really no sense to go to perfect on it. And I guess I could have just stopped making all this framing and just said, hey, I'm making an exterior of a building so that you're not going to see this, but I don't know. Like I said, I was having fun, so I was just like rolling with it, letting the project take me where it wanted to take me, for better or for worse. And knowing that this wouldn't stay as just a framed structure as the finished piece, I definitely was glad to not have to do the rafters accurately. That would have been a real pain in the butt. So I just had them good enough that they would be able to support some cross planking later and then some shingles, and would read as an actual constructed roof when I had it in a sort of dilapidated state when things were poking through. I've refrained from gluing these two floors together. I want to be able to have access to the inside of this one here. I'm pretty sure that I'm going to put some kind of wood siding on the outside of this and turn it into like an old, creepy, dilapidated, abandoned farmhouse. But I still want to be able to put some interior walls and flooring on this because as to not waste all this framing, I want to have it really dilapidated, which means some like big holes in the walls where you can actually see inside it. I might even end up just like busting out or chopping out huge sections of the wall or corner to make that visible once it's sheeted, and to have a place to put some miniatures inside it. It's kind of interesting because like right now, this is, looks like a very generic North American house. This is probably how I'll assemble it to do the whole farmhouse thing. But if I actually turn this around like this, it turns it into a much more modern structure with a little walkout bedroom balcony there. I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this little exercise here of just messing around and playing with some materials and building for building's sake. I promise that next video I will turn this into something actually usable for gaming, but I wanted to document just this portion of the build as is because I think it's pretty neat, and I'm sure there's some other people out there who will also think it's cool. If you want to pick up some tools or supplies, like maybe that sick little miniature table saw that I was using for this, you can go to my essential equipment page on blackmagiccraft.ca. I link to the stuff I use, and when you shop through those links, I get a small commission from Amazon, which is in large part how I fund these videos. The other way I can afford to put food on the table for my family is through the generous support of people on Patreon. So if you enjoy these videos I make and you want to help me out, help me keep making them, it would mean a lot if you were to support the channel there on Patreon. I also do have on my main website, blackmagiccraft.ca, a bunch of merch, artwork, and builds that I've done that are available for sale. So go check that out if you're interested in that sort of thing-imagery. That's it, that's all. This has kind of made me want to go watch Beetlejuice. Maybe that's what I'll do. Cheers.